Hello everyone, welcome to another interesting and informative session of the Analyst brought to you by Vajiram and Ravi. In today's session, we will discuss 9 important articles as featured in the Hindu and Indian Express for your comprehensive understanding of the current affairs. The first 5 main articles are as follows. In the first topic, we are going to read about what are the challenges which lies en route to India becoming a developed nation by the year of 2047. Then in the second topic, we are going to read about the devastating flood in Assam, what are the causes behind it, and what are the mitigation measures which can be taken. In the third topic, we are going to read about various concepts related to Indian economy such as GDP, fiscal deficit, and bank credit. In the fourth topic, we are going to read about a comparative analysis of the impeachment procedure between Indian President and US President. And finally, in the fifth topic, we are going to read about a concerning issue of dark web. Towards the end, there will be news snippets especially curated to help you excel in the upcoming prelims examination, so stay tuned. The lead article in Indian Express by the former Reserve of Bank of India Governor C. Rangarajan aims to chart a clear roadmap for India's growth to become a developed country by the year of 2047. This path which India is going to embark upon and the challenges which lies ahead forms an important component of your GS3 paper under the larger theme of Indian economy and the issues related to planning. So let's first try to develop understanding about what do we mean by developed nation. Keep this in mind that not at United Nations, neither at the financial platforms such as World Bank or IMF, there exists no standard definition for a developed nation. However, keep this in mind that UNCTAD prepares a list of 45 least developed countries on the basis of which World Trade Organization provide them various concessions. So, if there is no such standard definition which exists for developed nation, C. Rangarajan defines it in the terms of World Bank categorization of the countries in 3 formats: the low income country, the middle income country, and the high income country. Here we are taking the high income country as a developed nation. So according to World Bank, what constitutes a high income country? If the per capita income of that country is $13,845 or more than that. In comparison to that, what is India's per capita income? So as per the budget 2023, our per capita income is 1.97 lakh rupees, which translates into $2,731, which means that we are falling quite behind when it comes to become a developed nation, as we have very low per capita income. But if we compare ourselves from where we are actually coming from, that is the time of our independence, we have registered significant growth. For example, at the time of independence, we constituted 4% of the world's GDP, but currently we are at 7.6% of the GDP of the world. We are 5th largest economy in the terms of nominal GDP and the 3rd largest economy in the terms of purchasing power parity. Then, we used to be the poorest country in the terms of per capita income, a data which has been given by the former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. And now we have the per capita income of $2,731 and thus we are ranked 106th in the world. We have also registered significant improvement in the sectors of education and health. For example, from the meager literacy rate of 12%, we have now increased it to up to 80%, and the average life expectancy, which used to be 32 years, it has increased to 67.7 years as per the United Nations Development Program report. Now, as per the report, if we want to become a developed nation in the span of next 23 years, there are several requirements which we need to fulfill. The first of that is that we shall maintain an annual real growth rate of 6 to 7% consistently, and the real gross fixed capital formation or GFCF shall be 35% of the GDP. Currently, it is very close to this, 30 to 33%. Now, what do we mean by the gross fixed capital formation? It is basically any kind of capital investment which provides us with significant returns over a long period of time. For example, if the government is building schools, hospitals, or if it is purchasing any kind of machinery. So for example, let's say if there is an airline company and that airline company has bought a fleet of airplanes, so that will constitute under the gross fixed capital formation. Also, if the government is developing public transport infrastructure such as metro, that will also fall in the category of GFCF. Now, there are certain ambitious targets which our current government has taken on the line to become a Viksit Bharat or developed nation by the year of 2047. So as per Niti Aayog, we are aspiring to become a $30 trillion economy by 2047. Currently, we are very close to 4 trillion economy. We will strive to increase our per capita income up to $18,000 to $20,000 from the current $2,700. Now, as per the Foreign Trade Policy 2023, we are aspiring to increase our goods export up to $1 trillion by the year of 2030. Currently, this percentage is around $445 billion of merchandise export trade was registered in this year itself. Now, at the same time, we are also, when we are planning to get to that status of developed nation, we are going to make sure that we are not going to harm the environment by taking the path of green growth. Thus, we have set for ourselves some important Panch Amrit targets, such as that the 50% of the total requirement of energy consumption by the year of 2030 will come from the renewable energy sources such as solar energy, wind energy, hydrogen produced energy. Then we are going to reduce 1 billion ton of greenhouse gas emission by the year of 2030. And much ambitious than that is that we are going to become a climate neutral country by the year of 2070. At the same time, on the line of this, in the budget 2024, the government launched a Viksit Bharat scheme, under which it is providing 75,000 crore interest-free loans to the state government so they can invest that in the infrastructure development as a form of the larger capital expenditure exercise. However, on the path to become this developed nation, there lies several challenges as highlighted by the report itself. The first claim is that this gross fixed capital formation which we are discussing about, a major share of that is actually coming from the government's capital expenditure. And this claim is not far from truth as well, because as we saw in the budget 2023 itself, the government actually increased its capital expenditure by 37% up to 10 lakh crore. At the same time, if we look here at the central government's capital spending trend, we can see that how it has been consistently increasing as the percentage of GDP. Now, as per C. Rangarajan, this high capital expenditure leading to the gross fixed capital formation, it is quite unsustainable because that will actually lead to the widening of fiscal deficit. So, our current fiscal deficit is 5.6% of the GDP. And the government is aspiring to reduce it to 4.5% of the GDP by the year of 2025. What does this mean? This means that either the government is going to increase its revenue significantly by increasing the taxes. That does not seem a possibility. So the second thing which the government can do is that it can actually start reducing its investment in the capital expenditure. So if the government is reducing its expenditure, and there is no parallel investment by the private sector which is taking place to match this, then it is obvious that the capital expenditure or the gross fixed capital formation in our country is going to decline. The next is the issue of the poor export growth. Export is very important for our economy because that shows the demand of the Indian products in the international market. Now there are several reasons because of this poor export growth has registered. One is obviously the various geopolitical tensions which are taking place. At the same time, many countries, they actually started adopting a protectionist policy, especially after COVID, such as we can see from the carbon border adjustment mechanism of European Union. Then this export was declined because of the non-competitiveness of Indian industries. and also because of our high import dependency for the critical products. So just look at this particular share of India's share in the world exports. Here, look at the service sector. The service sector has obviously registering the growth, but if we look at the merchandise sector, it has registered a meager growth in the recent years. That is a major problem because that shows that the Indian products are not much in the demand in the international market and thus depriving us of the very essential foreign exchange reserves and thus declining our balance of trade and balance of payment. Now we are heavily import dependent for critical products. So it is known to all of you that we are more than 80% oil import dependent. But even if we look at the other critical minerals, just look at the table and look at our dependency on China for several critical products such as computer hardware, the consumer electronics, the telecom instruments, the electronic instruments, organic chemicals, as well as fertilizers. We are almost 23% dependent on China for that. So because we are so much import dependent, it is obvious that when we are importing this, it is obviously going to hamper our domestic manufacturing. At the same time, our prices of the product which we are creating, that will increase as well. So that will make our products non-competitive in the international market. Then, because of all these issues, the low manufacturing output, the low demands for Indian products in the market, it has led to a jobless growth. The jobless growth can be seen from the data that currently in this financial year, we are experiencing a 9.6% increase in the nominal GDP. And at the same time, if we look at the report from Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, there exists 6.8% unemployment rate in our economy. The other challenges are, as highlighted by the report, that when we are going to transition from Industry 4.0 to Industry 5.0, which will be heavily led by the integration of artificial general intelligence, big data analytics, machine learning, that will actually lead to the reduction in the absorption of labor per unit of output. In the simpler terms, it is basically saying that there will take place a lot of job layoffs, the unemployment rate will actually increase, and further we will require the skilling of large number of masses. And that is another problem because in our country there exists low skill level. Because as highlighted by the Periodic Labour Force Survey report of 2022, 86% of the people between the age group of 15 to 59 years, the age group which is also considered as the demographic dividend for the country, there were 86% people who had not received any kind of vocational training or industry specific training. Just look at the chart and see the skill gap in various industries and just look at the staggering numbers. Now, when we are talking about to become a developed nation, should we just limit our discussion only to the economic indicators? Or should we also integrate several socio-economic indicators as well? The indicators which we need to work upon and shall be removed if we want to achieve the status of a developed nation. The first of that is the extreme poverty which exists in our country. As highlighted by the Multidimensional Poverty Index of 2023, there exists 23 crore multidimensional poor people in our country. And that is also reflected in our abysmal ranking of 111th in the Global Hunger Index of 2023 out of 125 countries, where we were actually trailing behind our neighboring countries such as Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. Then another big issue is of the gender gap which is widening. For example, if we look at the female labor force participation rate, as per the India employment report, that is around 28%. So means that every 100 women who enters into the working economy, only 28 of them gets employed. On the other hand, this ratio is of 76% for men. Thus, there exists a huge gap of 48%. At the same time, this leads to our abysmal ranking of 127 on the Global Gender Gap Index of 2023. Now, as per World Bank, there exist two more important challenges. The first of that is that India might have got caught in a middle income trap. What does a middle income trap means? It basically means that an economy is unable to transition from a middle economy to a high income economy. And there are several reasons for that. The first can be the rising inflation. So that is around currently 5 to 6% of the consumer price index combined. Because of that, what is taking place is that because the prices of the goods have soared, the people, their propensity to consume has declined. So it is obvious that if we are not buying enough, the industries, they will stop the production. They do not want to incur the loss. And because of that, there will take place heavy unemployment because there is no requirement of labor to produce the good. So that creates a domino effect on the economy. And that is why the overall consumption in our economy is declining. Here, keep a very important detail in the mind that when we calculate our GDP from the expenditure method, the consumption expenditure forms 56% of that. Now, on the basis of this information, tries to understand another important concept, that is of rising inequality. Just look at the graph here. It says that the richest 10% of the population, it holds 77% of the national wealth. What we can understand from that? That there are 10% of the people who have got the large share of economy and assets. Now, as on one hand we are saying that the 56% of our GDP is composed of consumption expenditure. So it is obvious that when the large section of people, they does not have wealth or asset, their consumption demand is obviously going to decline. At the same time, this 10% richest people, they are not going to buy the large number of goods which we are producing, such as TVs, bikes, small cars, small houses. Thus, the large circulation of money is actually curtailed by such plutocracy. And there is another issue of the declining competitiveness of our Indian industries, as we discuss. Then there are certain geopolitics and regional integration issues which can also arise in our path to become a developed nation. The first is obviously the access to the Central Asia and the Eastern Europe, which is curtailed because of our turbulent relations with our neighbors such as Afghanistan, Pakistan and China. That is why we are creating that Middle East Economic Corridor, or we are trying to invest in the Chabahar port of Iran. Also, there is a China's increasing dominance in the Indo-Pacific region, where our 60% of the trade is actually comprised of, and the supply chain disruptions which are recently taking place, such as in the Red Sea because of the Houthis attack. So all these geopolitical developments can also hamper India's prospect to become a developed nation. That is why the report provides for certain suggestive measures which can be implemented. The first is that we shall actually strive to increase the private investment. Thus, we can provide several incentives to these private consumption as well as investments. So they can also match the investment which is done by the government. The public-private partnership initiatives can be encouraged as well. Then we shall try to actually replicate the service export, the growth which we registered in the service export, that shall be replicated in the manufacturing sector by its integration with the modern day technologies. The next is that we shall actually try to provide impetus on sunrise industry, such as the report suggests for the farm processing sector, because that can actually lead to a lot of employment in the agriculture sector as well. Then we need to develop self-sufficiency for the critical imports. So for example, if we are dependent on lithium, recently the lithium reserves were discovered in Riyasi district of Jammu and Kashmir. So we try to do effective exploration as immediate as possible, try to start seeing that if it is industry viable or not. Then there shall be reduction in the poverty ratio which shall be taken by providing several social security nets such as National Food Security Act of 2013, by strengthening the public distribution system, and at the same time by providing them equal access to education under the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. Then the report suggests that we need to boost the middle class because we want to increase our consumption expenditure, to increase the overall demand in the economy. And to do that, it suggests that we shall actually reduce the taxes on this middle class, so obviously their consumption demand will increase. So on the basis of these suggestions, try to solve this particular question and we move forward to the next news. As per the Hindu report, there is taking place a severe flood in Assam. That has been caused due to the overflowing of Brahmaputra river, which has been triggered by the Remal cyclone, which recently hit the coast of Bay of Bengal, and it is severely impacting the region of Kachar and Karbi Anglong in Assam. This issue of flood, specifically in the region of Assam as well as in the larger context of our country, forms an important component of your GS3 paper under the larger theme of climate change and the disaster management. So let's first try to understand what are the causes of the flood which is taking place in the Assam currently, and keep this in mind that Assam is frequently in the news every year because of this flooding, and you guys will start reading about it especially in the month of June and July. So the first reason is to understand the role of Brahmaputra. The Brahmaputra, which rises from Chemyundung Glacier, which is very near to the Mansarovar in Himalayas in the Tibetan Plateau. So it rises from there. Now the temperature in that particular region is almost rising by 0.42 degrees Celsius every decade because of the frequent global warming which is taking place. So it is obvious that because of this warming, snow melting will take place, and thus the flow of river will obviously drastically increase. The second reason is that try to understand the topography of Assam and how the Brahmaputra river reaches to it. So the Brahmaputra river is originating from this region of Tibet, and then it enters into the Arunachal Pradesh. So by the time it comes to Assam, which is actually on the plains, and Arunachal Pradesh is on the hills. So it is flowing through a lot of mountain and thus carrying a lot of sediment. Now the slope, which used to be around 2.8 meter per kilometer in the region of Arunachal Pradesh, it significantly declines up to 0.1 meter per kilometer in the region of Assam. So by the time the Brahmaputra reaches to the plain, it is obvious that its velocity is going to decline, and at the same time it is carrying high amount of sediments from the mountains. Thus, this leads to heavy sediment deposition. And because of this heavy sediment deposition, the river bank cutting starts taking place, and thus the Brahmaputra river, it just widens. So this river bank erosion has actually led to the width of Brahmaputra has increased up to 15 km. Also, as we were discussing about the location of the Assam, so it is in the plain region and it lies on the downstream of Brahmaputra river. So because of that, it ultimately leads to a lot of flooding, and because of the heavy sedimentation, the Brahmaputra shifted its channels very swiftly. So because of that, also the prediction of the flood in the region becomes very difficult. The second is that the Assam is quite at the proximity of the region of Bay of Bengal, where a lot of such cyclones take place. So the effect of Remal cyclone is very much visible in the region of Assam. And obviously there are climatic factors. As the global warming is taking place, the climate change induced flash floods are also taking place in the region of Assam. The other causes are anthropogenic factors. So first try to understand that the population density in the region of Assam used to be around 30 people per kilometer square in the year of 1940, which has 10 times increased up to 398 per kilometer square by the time of 2011. And obviously we are talking about it in 2024, so it has obviously further significantly increased. Because of this population boom, there is taking place a lot of construction activity, and thus encroachment is taking place in the floodplains. What are the floodplains? This is the course of the river. But when the flow of the river can increase from the upstream region, the river can actually expand to its floodplains as well. Now people have started constructing their homes at this particular region, leading to the encroachment of this particular area. Thus obviously they are lying right in the radar of the expansion of the Brahmaputra which is taking place, thus leading to significant damage to property and lives. Now, if we look at the highway and railway lines which has been created by the government, because Assam is very important state to us, it is just right at the chicken neck corridor. So it is the connecting part to the whole of northeast for us. So there is a lot of government construction which is also taking place in the region in the form of highways and railways. but that is almost parallel to the floodplains of Brahmaputra. So this actually prevents the outflow of the rain or monsoon which is taking place. So this actually prevents the outflow of the water to the river, and because of this constructional activity a lot of water logging take place, and thus when Brahmaputra expands it actually leads to devastating impact in those localized regions. Then it is obvious that the deforestation has taken place because of this encroachment. So when the forest is removed or the plants are removed, the top soil cover gets inundated as well. It gets degraded as well. And because of that, the top soil layer is gone. So if even the small flow of water will take place, it can actually lead to the complete degradation of that particular region, because of the whole washing off of that land can be done, because there is no plants to hold on the roots to the soil. The next is the destruction of wetlands. So these wetlands actually act as a sponge. So if there is any extra outflow of the water is taking place, that can come and get accumulated in the wetlands. But all these wetlands are being dusted to create a space for further construction, a major problem which is also being faced in the region of Bangalore. Now, because of the practice of jhum cultivation, that is slash and burn technique, which is majorly practiced in the region of northeast, that can also increase these causes of deforestation. So if we look at the survey here, just look that how the widening of Brahmaputra has done over the course of years, as we were talking about the sedimentation and degradation. And obviously all of this has further been emphasized because of the climate change induced global warming which is taking place. So it is obvious that the precipitation in that particular region might have increased. And as we witnessed in 2023, the Assam, it actually experienced 2,900 mm of rainfall, which is on the decade high, and at the same time it experienced 106% above the long period average of the rainfall. So it is obvious that the climate change induced global warming is also leading to heavy precipitation in the region, thus further causing or impacting the flash floods. Now, what is the impact of this flood in Assam? So as per the National Flood Commission, 40% of the Assam's region is actually prone to flood. Keep this in mind that this 40% region of Assam which is prone to flood, that constitutes the 10% of the total flood prone region of the country. Now because these floods take place, it is obvious that that will also inundate the croplands. So that will lead to the destruction of the agricultural variety or the crop and livestock in the region. Thus, because of the flood, the total amount of croplands which has been destroyed, that constitutes half of the size of the Sikkim. That much cultivable area has lost to these floods from the year of 1954. Obviously, a lot of damage to life and property takes place as well, and that ultimately translates into the loss of GDP. So as per the Central Water Commission, in the year of 2023 itself, Assam lost around 200 crore of rupees in the damage of life, property, the rehabilitation process which needs to be done. Now keep this in mind that there are several important national parks and wildlife sanctuaries in the region of Assam, such as one being the Kaziranga. The Kaziranga, which is known for its world famous one-horned rhinos. So when this flood takes place, these rhino population also gets impacted, and almost 20 to 25 one-horned rhinos were lost to the Brahmaputra flood which was caused the last year, thus severely impacting the biodiversity of the region. Thus, there are certain mitigation measures which shall be adopted. And we can divide that into two parts for the ease of the examiner to understand this. That is the short term and the long term. In the short term, there shall be as early deployment possible of the National Disaster Response Force and State Disaster Response Force. Then there shall be immediate creation of shelter camps and distribution centers. Then we can actually integrate the modern technologies such as drones, artificial intelligence, big data analytics to monitor the flood, to provide for early warning systems and do the consistent monitoring through these drones. In the long term, we can actually strive to create storage reservoirs where whatever is the extra water which has been brought by that flood, that can be channeled to these storage reservoirs and embankments can be created. So there was a large embankment plan which was actually being deployed in Assam with almost the investment of 30,000 crore, but that has not yet fulfilled yet. Then we can actually do the floodplain zoning. So what is floodplain zoning? Let's say there is this one particular area. So we can actually devise this area that if the flood is going to take place, this is the maximum floodplain which will actually expand in and around Brahmaputra. So we can divide this plain in A, B, C part by identifying the vulnerable areas. So when we are doing this evacuation or rehabilitation, first of all, these regions shall be targeted. At the same time, we can start creating the same downstream and upstream formula here as well, where the large amount of construction shall be done in those areas which are not prone to flood. Then the flood insurance can be provided to the larger public through LIC as well. Also, we can do social engineering where we can actually create a lot of awareness among the people that what is flood, what are the severe causes which take place. If such flood is going to occur on the short notice, what are our evacuation plan is going to be. Also have a quick look here about the various measures which has been given here for the risk analysis, for the disaster risk reduction, the response and how we can recover from the flood. This is a kind of a small graph which you can also inculcate in your answers. We move forward to the next news. Various articles showcases the current state of Indian economy by providing the data on the GDP growth, fiscal deficit and the bank credit. And all of these data, keep this in your mind, it is very important and relevant for your upcoming prelims examination as well as for the next year under the theme of Indian economy. So let's first try to understand what do we mean by gross domestic product. Gross domestic product is basically the total amount of production of goods and services which has been done within the boundary of India. So in this we are going to add all the consumption expenditure as we were talking about. We will add the government expenditure. We are going to add the expenditure which is done by the private sector. We are going to include the exports because those products were produced in our country and then sold to the other country. What we are not going to include is going to be your imports. We are not going to include in our gross domestic product the transfer payments which is done by the government, such as any subsidy which is provided by the government, or let's say if the government has provided you any scholarship. So all that will not be included in the GDP because again that money will reach to you and you will spend it. So that will come under the category of consumption expenditure. So we just avoid this double reading or double calculation. So all of this does not included in the GDP. Now there comes two kinds of GDP. One is your nominal GDP and the other is your real GDP. Now let's say what is real GDP. Real GDP is that we have decided a base year for that, that is 2011 and 12. And for our convenience, because in 2011 and 12, there was no drastic event which was taking place in the economy, such as COVID. There was kind of a stability in the economy. The inflation rate was low as well. So we chose that year. Now on the basis of that, let's say we have produced 10 pens in 2024. And the price of those 10 pens were 10 rupees back in 2011. So we can say that our real GDP was 100 rupees or the real GDP in 2024 is 100 rupees on the comparison of base year. So thus we calculate the real GDP on consistent prices. The second comes your nominal GDP. What is nominal GDP? Nominal GDP is basically the total production which has been done into inflation. So here we are not including the inflated prices because they are indexed on the base price. Here in the nominal GDP, the inflation will obviously be there. So let's say even if the same amount of pen was produced as back in 2011 and 12 and the price of those pen has now increased to 20 rupees. So it is obvious that our GDP size will almost double from 100 to 200. Correct? So obviously nominal GDP is not the clear indicator of the actual state of the economy. Now there has been several data which has been provided to us, which was recently released by the Comptroller General of Accounts. Let's see what is the data. So the real GDP, it was in the fiscal year 2023 7%, and now that has actually increased in the fiscal year 2024 up to 8.2%. So if the real GDP has increased, we can say for sure that yes, the production output is increasing. The nominal GDP growth rate, which was 9.6% in the fiscal year 24, over the growth rate of 14.2% in the fiscal year 23. To understand this, let's say the fiscal year 2022, our economy was at 100 rupees. Then in fiscal year 2023, it increased by 14%. So it became what? 114 rupees. Now it has increased further 9.6 over and above that, our nominal GDP. So now it has increased by further 10 rupees and now our economy will get to 124 rupees. Then it is saying that the gross value addition. What is gross value addition? Let's try to have a quick understanding about that as well. So gross value addition is basically your total GDP plus here we are going to add if there is any subsidies which is provided by the government. Here we are going to add the production tax. What is production tax? See, try to understand this. Let's say I am producing a bat. Now, if to produce this bat, there were several taxes which I had to pay to the government. That will be included there. Now this bat is ready. Now it is ready to sold in the market. When it will go into the market, there will be certain GST will be applied. This is called as product tax. This product tax is not included in the GVA at all. So remember, we add production tax in GVA but not the product tax. So as per the report, in the fiscal year 2024, the GVA, the gross value addition, has actually increased 7.2% faster than it was 6.7% in the year of 2023. So obviously the value addition has been done in the industry. So GVA actually shows the national income from the supply side, not from the demand side of the consumers, right? So why this GVA has registered such faster growth? The reason being that the manufacturing sector, that has increased by 9.9% and the mining and quarrying sector has increased by 7.1%. If we look at here, it is telling us about the real GDP growth which was registered. If we look at from the year of 2014 to 23, we registered a negative real GDP growth in obviously in the pandemic time period. Since then, you cannot say that it has consistently increased. So if a statement like this comes in your prelims examination, be very careful. The second important data which we are going to talk about is fiscal deficit. Again, we'll try to develop a bit of understanding about it. See, let's say my income is 100 rupees. Every day when I'm working, by the end of the month, I'm getting 100 rupees. That I will call as revenue receipt, the income which I have earned. But I went on Flipkart, I liked a t-shirt there. The price of that t-shirt is 200. I purchased that. So my revenue expenditure is actually higher than my revenue receipt. So it is obvious that a kind of a deficit will take place here, which will be called as revenue deficit. Now over and above this, there are certain other requirements which I need to fulfill, because now I have purchased only the t-shirt. I want the pant as well, the shoes as well. To do all that, I will actually go to the market to borrow. Now this deficit which I had incurred as well as this borrowing which I am doing, when I will include all of that, that will become my physical deficit. At the same time, let me tell you, I am a very borrowing kind of a person, because of which I had taken loans earlier as well. So I am paying a bit of interest on that as well. Now, if I add this interest payment, it is already included in the fiscal deficit. So that is the total amount of money which I do not have and I need to borrow. That is showing the borrowing of the government. If from this fiscal deficit, if I just reduced the interest which I am paying on the loan which I have taken, that is called as your primary deficit. So if as high as the primary deficit, that is as good for the economy, because that means that we have very less interest to pay. Now, as per the budget estimate of 2023, the fiscal deficit was around 5.9%. Now, for this financial year, as per the Controller General of Accounts, it has come down to 5.6% of the GDP, which means that currently we have the total amount of borrowing of 16.5 lakh crore. If we look at our complete government debt, you can see here that there is no such trend which you can make here again. Right now, if you look at the year of 23 and 24, it is around 82.4%. And if we look at our interest and the capital spending, so our capital expenditure, if you look here, it has been rising in the last few years. Remember when we were discussing about the gross fixed capital formation, our interest payment has actually declined. So that is a good sign for our economy. Now, when we come to the fiscal deficit, that is 5.6%. The total expenditure which the government is doing, that is around 44.4 lakh crore. The capital expenditure in that total expenditure is around 9.4 lakh crore. And the total revenue which government earned in this fiscal year is around 27.2 lakh crore. That is why we have this deficit of 16.5 lakh crore. Now, what are the causes because of the reduction in this fiscal deficit? The first is obviously that the tax dividends has increased. The income of the government has increased. So my income was 100. If it increases from 150 to 150, I wish. And then there has taken place the decline in the food and fertilizer subsidy. Thus, the government is now taking a consolidation path where it is striving that by this financial year of 2024, it is going to achieve 5.1% of GDP. And in the financial year of 2025, our ultimate target is to 4.5% of GDP. Keep this in mind that as per the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act of 2003, we aim to get our fiscal deficit to 3% and to decline it further up to 0. But now that target seems a far distant reality. The other news and the data which was given in the today's newspaper is about the bank credit. Now, this report has been released by the Reserve Bank of India called as Sectoral Deployment of Bank Credit, where it talks about the bank credit, the credit which is being provided from the bank, that has actually increased 15% in the April. In same, if we compare in the month of fiscal year 2023, there was a 16% growth. So there are major credit enhancement which has been done to the agriculture sector, a 19% growth. To the industries, 7.2%. In the service sector, it has increased as well. But when it comes to the bank giving loans to the non-banking financial companies, that has actually declined or decelerated by 14%. The reason for that is the major issues which are taking place in the non-banking financial companies that has been covered in the previous session of the Analyst. Do go and watch that. Now coming to the India's Forex Reserve. Remember that India's Forex Reserve almost reached to an all-time high of $648.7 billion very recently in the previous week. Now it has actually fallen down to $646.67 billion. So not a drastic decline as well. Now what does our foreign exchange reserves consist of? So remember this very importantly for your prelims examination. It contains foreign currency assets, the gold reserves, the special drawing rights of IMF, and the India's reserve position with IMF as well. Another key detail here is that the foreign currency assets, which forms the part of our foreign exchange reserve, it includes the appreciation or depreciation effect of the non-US units. So keep this important statement in your mind, and with this we move forward to the next news. Recently, the former US President Donald Trump was actually found guilty of falsifying the records, and thus he has been criminally convicted, which is an unprecedented event in the American presidency. So now there is a major issue has arisen, a major question that now whether Donald Trump can actually contest from the Republican Party in the coming elections or not. We are going to discuss that and much more in this session under the theme of current events of international importance. So the argument is that now because he has criminally convicted, can he contest for the position of President of United States of America? Very surprisingly, the answer is yes. Because the qualification requirement of US president as laid down by the US Constitution, which was adopted in the year of 1787 at the Congress of Philadelphia, it says that the person shall be 35 years or older. That person has to be a natural born citizen of United States of America. That person shall have lived in United States for at least 14 years of time period. But keep this in mind that it does not mention at all about the criminal record of the person. So there is no bar as per se by the US Constitution that if the person has been criminally convicted, he cannot contest an election. So Donald Trump can still do that. Now the question arises that what about the Indian president? What are the qualifications to become an Indian president? So as per the Constitution, again, just like US, he shall be 35 years or older. Here, he shall not be only a natural born citizen, but any citizen of India. Now here there is another interesting concept, that is that to become an Indian president, first you need to fulfill the qualification to contest for the election of Lok Sabha. And at the same time, you shall not hold any office of profit. It is obvious that the office of profit has not been defined in the Constitution. At the same time, if you are observing very carefully, there is no such criminal precedent which has been mentioned here for the qualification of Indian president as well. However, when it says that you shall be qualified for the election of Lok Sabha, that is a very interesting twist here. Because if you have been criminally convicted for more than 2 years, then you are disqualified to contest the election for Lok Sabha, and thus you will also be disqualified to contest the election for the president. In the line of the continuation of this argument, we are also going to talk about the impeachment procedure and the difference between the Indian and US president. So in US, they have the House of Representatives. We can just say that it is basically the Lok Sabha, directly elected by the people, and they have a Senate. And in India, we have the counterpart as Rajya Sabha. Now, in US, if there is any kind of impeachment resolution which has to be released, that can be done by any member, even a single member, but only in the House of Representatives or the lower house, right? So any house member can initiate the impeachment resolution. What are the grounds for which such resolution can be initiated? So the US Constitution says that for the conviction of treason, bribery or any other high crimes. If we look at the Indian president, he can only be impeached for one and sole reason, and that is if he has violated the Constitution of India. Keep this in mind that the Constitution of India has not been defined anywhere. Then again, here in India, if I want to initiate a resolution process to impeach the president, I can come from any house, either from Lok Sabha or from Rajya Sabha. And now when I'm initiating this process, this resolution needs to be signed by 1/4 or 25% of the member of that house which is acting as a prosecutor, and at least 14 days notice shall be given to the president. Then what is the requirement to pass such resolution, or the majority to pass such resolution in the first house which is acting as a prosecutor? So for US president, the House of Representatives first forms a judiciary committee, and if they have got a sufficient evidence, then this resolution is put to vote, and that resolution shall be passed by a simple majority. On the other hand, remember that there is a very special kind of majority which is required to pass such impeachment resolution for the president in our country, where the House needs to pass it by the 2/3 of the total membership of the House. So if the membership of the Lok Sabha is 550, then 66% of votes shall go in the favor to impeach the president. However, in House of Representatives in US, it is only a simple majority. Then the majority which is required in the second house, that is Senate there, then it becomes a 2/3 majority, and the same 2/3 majority of the total membership of House is also required in the second house in our country as well. Remember, neither in US nor in India, no president has been impeached so far. Yes, you heard it very right. You might have heard that the Donald Trump was impeached. He was impeached, but only in the House of Representatives, but that was not passed in the House of Senate. So keep these important details in your mind. We move forward to the next news, where we are going to talk about a very interesting concept, but a concerning as well, that is dark web. Why? Because recently the Enforcement Directorate has actually arrested a vendor of Uttarakhand who was operating an international drug trafficking group, and he was doing that by using the platform of the dark web. This concept of dark web forms an important component of your prelims examination under the larger theme of science and technology. So let's first try to understand what do we mean by dark web. See, when we are using the internet, there are a lot of websites which are freely available to us, which has got their index sites such as .org or .com. So by doing this, the internet can actually easily index these sites and bring it in the front of us by following an exercise called as crawling. So these are the sites which are easily available to us, which we can access freely, such as, for example, any searchable website, any public blog or forum, a shopping website, let's say Flipkart and Amazon, the search engine which you are using, Google, Firefox, all of that falls in the category of the surface web. It is called as a surface web, the reason being that it is completely accessible, right? And because of this reason as well, that if we consider this whole internet platform as an iceberg, then this surface wave only forms 5% or the tip of that iceberg. Then the second part is your deep web. What is deep web? Deep web is basically the sites which requires the logins, the email accounts, your banking portals. So let's say if you are using Aadhaar, so it is obvious that you can access that Aadhaar online as well. But that Aadhaar is not accessible by all the people. So that falls in the category of a deep web. Then comes your dark web. It is called as dark because it is accessible only with special tools or software such as the onion ring. A special platform where you can actually go and access certain sites which are not accessible to you on daily basis. What are these sites? These are the sites which require a special tool to access, such as the onion ring, the websites which are not found on search engines, which has got onion domains or decentralized marketplaces. Now let's try to develop a bit of understanding that what is exactly this deep web and dark web. So dark web is a kind of a place which constitute 90% of that whole iceberg about which we were talking about. So deep web can actually protect the information which is stored online. It can access from anywhere with a specific password or unique links. So I can send you my Aadhaar details and then I can give you my login and you can access that as well. This makes about the 96% of the total internet, 95 to 96%. Here the VPNs are also used. So let's say if I want to watch a movie and the pirated version of that movie is uploaded on some site. So I specifically search for that site and I download the movie for that. This site falls in the category of a deep web. Even though piracy is illegal, but here I am not doing something which is causing a lot of harm to the society. Here I can use a VPN which can actually keep my IP address safe and my identity safe as well. Then comes your dark web. That makes your online activity completely anonymous. So that is why this person was actually using it to run an international drug trafficking racket, right? And it can only be accessed with a dark web browser such as the Onion Ring project. The size is completely unknown and the dark web browser actually provides for an automatic encryption. So just look how the onion ring works. So why we are calling it as an onion ring? Because it has got several peels, right? There are several layers of the onion. Exactly that is a kind of network which is created on this dark web. So here is the target. Now this person will start connecting various anonymous users across the world and that will form an encrypted chain. Unless and until they will reach to their target, they will just hack that person's data or something. And that person will not even actually get to know that who was actually the real culprit here. So this is kind of a onion ring where the client has a list of nodes from a directory server and he establishes new and random connections, right? So maybe right now your mobile is actually being used to just decode or just kind of theft of some Aadhaar data, and you might not even be aware about it. Then there are certain issues which are involved with the dark web as highlighted by the report as well, such as the child pornography, the leaked data. For example, in December 2023, there was a huge news about the Aadhaar data of 815 million people which was leaked on the dark web. It can lead to the use of malware to just completely corrupt your system. The hackers can use it for the purpose of cyber terrorism. Your important data such as credit and debit card data can be compromised. The arms and ammunition selling can be done, and the drug trafficking can also be done. Keep this in mind that under the Information Technology Act of 2008, this activity of using the dark web is not illegal. Yes, you can use it. But again, there are certain provisions that if you are involving in cyber terrorism, obviously the government will intervene and just try to arrest you. But using or accessing the dark web, that does not fall in the category of Information Technology Act of 2008. That is why there are suggestions that we shall actually adopt the China model. The China model where there is actually a great firewall which prevents any kind of such onion ring networks, and it just jams these kind of networks. So this kind of China model shall be adopted by our computer emergency and response team, which act as a nodal agency to deal with any kind of computer related theft or hacking which is being done, and it functions under the Ministry of Information and Technology. So keep these important things in your mind, and we move forward to the next segment, where we are going to talk about some interesting news which has featured today and that can help you to eliminate some important statements in your prelims examination. The first news which we are going to cover, it will talk about the Military Gender Advocate of the Year award, which is given by the United Nations organization, and it has been given to the Radhika Sen of our country, a very pride moment for us, where she was actually serving for the United Nations organization's peacekeeping mission at the Democratic Republic of Congo. And it was given on the International Day of UN Peacekeepers, which is celebrated on 29th of May. She said a very beautiful line, which you guys can also inculcate in your ethics answer, where she said, and I quote, that the peace begins with all of us in our beautiful diversity. So remember this Military Gender Advocate of the Year award, which has been given to the Radhika Sen for her exceptional services at peacekeeping mission at Democratic Republic of Congo. The next news which we are going to cover talks about the exit polls. What are exit polls? The exit polls which are going to start from today onwards, because the last phase of election is going to take place. So it is basically an estimate about how the voters polled in the election. And that is basically a kind of an estimate which is formed by taking the interviews of the voter right after they have come out by casting their vote. Now, as per the directives by the Election Commission of India, such exit polls by various news channels cannot be published unless and until the last phase of voting has done, so that no indiscriminate influence of the voters can take place. Now, it is released obviously after the last phase of voting. The first such exit poll was conducted from the time of second Lok Sabha election, which took place in the year of 1957, and it was conducted by the Indian Institute of Public Opinion. Can these exit polls are completely secure, completely reliable data? Not at all. They can be erroneous as well, as it happened that the Lok Niti CSDS prediction of the Chhattisgarh state election was wrong 2 times, first in 2018 and simultaneously in 2023 election as well. The reason for that is because these exit polls, they follow a kind of a swing model, where they see the vote share of different parties and candidates on the basis of the interview which they take from the voters, and the seat forecast is done on the basis of the result of previous election as well. Now, for example, this is the exit poll which was released after the elections of 2019. Here, the BJP was shown to win various number of seats. However, they were very close actually, as it ended up winning the 303 seats in the final result. The next news which we are going to talk about is the ancient city of Indraprasth. The reason for that is because the depiction of Mahabharata was done at Purana Killa under the Adopt a Heritage scheme of Ministry of Tourism. This Purana Killa, which was built by the second Mughal ruler, who was Humayun, who ruled from 1530 to 1540 and then for a very short period of 1555 to 56, where he created this Purana Killa as the part of the city of Deenpana. Now the theory is that this place where the Lal Killa was created is actually the ancient city of Indraprasth, or the city of Pandavas, where obviously the Duryodhan refused to grant this city to the Pandavas, and it became one of the major contesting point for the great battle of Mahabharata. This is also mentioned in Ain-e-Akbari by Abul Fazl, where he mentioned that how this Purana Killa was created right at the place where there used to be the city of Pandavas. Now when the excavation has been done since the time of Bibi Lal, we have found here the painted graveware pottery, which we associate with the time period of 1100 BC to 500 BC. Keep this in mind that there are several theories and interpretations. We will not dwell in that. We will just focus that this discovery of painted graveware pottery from this particular region that actually shows that there existed a continuous habitation in Delhi from 1200 BC onwards. With this, we'll move to the last news of the day. We are going to cover a very interesting species, and that is Hullock gibbon. The reason for that is that the Northeast Frontier Railway, they are actually planning to construct canopy bridges for India's only ape. So there are 20 ape species which occur, and out of that Hullock gibbon is one of them. And the major reason where they are found, that is your Holangapur gibbon sanctuary in Jorhat, Assam, where they are actually a kind of a arboreal species where they just climb and sleep on the tall trees along. But because of the creation of these railway projects, there was a deforestation which was taking place, and because of that reason it was actually impacting the population of Hullock gibbon in the region. That is why we are creating these canopy bridges. Some interesting fact about Hullock gibbon. First, they are smallest and fastest of all apes. Their habitat ranges from India, Bangladesh, Myanmar and China. And in IUCN, they are characterized as endangered species, and they have listed on the Schedule 1 on the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. So remember these important details about the Hullock gibbon, very important for your prelims examination, and try to solve this particular question. Please comment your answer in the comment box. I hope you will be able to eliminate an option very easily. And with this, we have reached to the end of our discussion today. Also, do not forget to attempt the questions at the end of the video, and we will meet in a very interesting discussion very soon. Till then, all the very best for your preparation, and thank you.